Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He moved to the Texas countryside for peace, solitude, and 15 acres of freedom. But when a power-hungry HOA president sets her sights on his land, one quiet veteran finds himself in a war he never asked for against clipboards, bureaucracy, and suburban tyranny. I never asked for neighbors. That was sort of the whole point of moving out here. 15 acres of solid Texas soil just outside Huntington, surrounded by nothing but tree lines, creeks, and the occasional deer. I'd spent 21 years in the Army being told when to eat, when to piss, when to sleep, and who my neighbors were. I figured I'd earned the right to live the rest of my life without a single soul knocking on my damn door. When I bought the land, the seller gave me one look, sized me up, and said, "You know there's an HOA development about a quarter-mile north, right?" I told him I didn't care if there was a theme park next door. As long as their property stopped where mine started, we'd be fine. I built up my place by hand. Took me a year and a half, sun up to sundown, cutting and welding, fixing the old barn, putting in a chicken coop, building a fence around my veggie garden. The house is modest. 2 bedrooms, metal roof, wrap-around porch where I drink black coffee and clean my guns. No Wi-Fi, spotty cell service, just the way I like it. Peaceful, simple, mine. Then one spring morning, as I was digging holes for some new fruit trees along the south fence, I noticed a woman standing just beyond the boundary line. Bleach blonde bob, yoga pants, and an air of forced friendliness that smelled like rotting peaches. "Hi there," she called out, waving like she was directing traffic. I nodded. Mornin'. I'm Karen Greenwood, president of the Sandstone Valley HOA. Poor woman introduced herself like I was supposed to applaud. "Okay," I said, turning back to my shovel. She didn't move. "You know, we've always admired this property. It's so underutilized." I wiped my forehead. "It's utilized just fine." "Well," she pressed on, taking a step closer, "every year we host something called Friendship Day. It's a little community event, family-oriented, music, kids camping, bonding, togetherness." "Sounds like a nightmare," I muttered. She blinked, unsure whether I was joking. "Anyway," she continued, smiling a little too wide, "we're running out of green space in our subdivision, and your land is just perfect. Just for one weekend. We'd clean up after ourselves. You wouldn't even notice us." "You would if you left a gum wrapper," I said, now fully turned toward her. "Let me be clear. This is my land. Private land. Not available. Not for rent. Not for donation. Not for 26 people, and certainly not for 260. She smiled like I was a toddler refusing broccoli. "I understand. It's just something to think about. Community's important. Ma'am, I served with people who slept in holes and ate dirt for breakfast. I know community. What I want now is solitude." Karen nodded slowly, like I had a learning disability. "Well, if you change your mind, we'd be thrilled to work with you. I'll leave you my card." She didn't, thank God. I figured that was the end of it. The kind of weird interaction you have with HOA people every once in a while. They want control, and when they don't get it, they wander off like a lost cat. I didn't think twice about it until the next week, when I spotted 2 young guys in neon vests walking around the West Field taking pictures with iPads. I shouted from the porch, "Y'all lost?" One of them waved and yelled, "Environmental review!" All good. Environmental review my ass. I rode the ATV down to where they were. "Who the hell sent you?" They looked at each other like deer in headlights. One said, "We're just contracted through the HOA. They said this was the extension site for Friendship Weekend." "What extension site?" They pointed to my land. "This one." I nearly laughed. "You see that fence behind you? That means you're trespassing. Now you can walk off, or you can wait here until the sheriff shows up and I charge you for stepping on my pasture." They bolted like rabbits. Later that night, I saw a post in the Sandstone Valley Community Facebook group. A neighbor sent me a screenshot. It was Karen's smiling face with the caption, "Friendship Day is expanding. Thanks to local partners for making this possible. Outdoor camp weekend coming soon. My land. My name nowhere in sight." I slept poorly that night, not because I was scared, but because I was mad. I'd seen this kind of move before, overseas. Start with a smile, then bring in the trucks. Bureaucratic warfare. I wasn't about to be conquered by a woman named Karen with a laminated name tag and a vision board. The smell hit me before I saw the mess. I was walking back from the chicken coop with a fresh basket of eggs when I caught a whiff of something between sunscreen, charcoal smoke, and the unmistakable stench of a portable toilet baking in the sun. At first, I thought maybe someone had pulled off the road, maybe took a leak by the tree line. That had happened before, but when I came around the barn, I stopped dead in my tracks. There were tents. Not one, not 5, dozens. Bright blue and neon green domes like someone had dropped a REI catalog across my pasture. Trucks and SUVs were parked in tight rows along the edge of the fence. A giant vinyl banner strung between 2 trees read, Sandstone Valley Friendship Weekend, hosted by HOA. There were kids screaming, teenagers tossing frisbees, people grilling, folks lounging in fold-up chairs like they were at a damn music festival on my land. I stood there for a full minute trying to process what I was seeing. Then I marched back to the porch, grabbed the .45 caliber from the gun safe, not to use, just for authority, and strode back toward the circus. The first person I flagged down was a man in a backwards cap and cargo shorts who was stuffing hot dogs into his kid's hands like he was a refugee camp worker. "You," I said. He looked up, confused. "Do you have any idea whose property this is?" Yeah, he said, waving me off. HOA said it was okay. We're just setting up. Should be all cleared by Sunday night. I blinked. That's not what I asked. Whose land is this? He shrugged. Community land or something? Wrong answer. I walked through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. Only nobody was moving aside because they thought I had divine authority. They just thought I was some grumpy redneck with a pistol. Fair enough. Then I saw her, standing by a folding table with cupcakes, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. Karen. "Greenwood," I shouted. She turned, surprised but not ashamed. "Oh, hi, John. Isn't it great? We had such an amazing turnout." "What the hell are you doing?" I was shaking now. "I told you no." She didn't flinch. "We assumed you changed your mind. You didn't put up a fence or any signage, so by city policy, the land can be temporarily registered under community access zoning if left unclaimed and unimproved." I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "What in the fresh hell is community access zoning?" She pulled out a printed PDF. "It's part of the Municipal Green Space Initiative. I filed a request with the city 2 weeks ago and listed your parcel as part of an unassigned buffer zone. You forged my consent?" "Oh no, not forged," she said quickly. There was an open comment period online. No one objected. "The website automatically approves if there's no response in 60 days. "I never even knew about it," I snapped. "Well, that's not my fault," she said sweetly. "We posted the notice to the HOA form and pinned it to the neighborhood kiosk. I'm not in your damn HOA, lady." She waved me off like I was a cranky child. "You're being aggressive, John. Please don't make this uncomfortable for the children." That's when I noticed one of the tents was staked right into the corner of my garden beds. Snap peas, trampled, tomato cages knocked over. 2 kids were playing tag between rows of my corn like it was a corn maze. I pulled out my phone and dialed the sheriff. Karen watched me with mild curiosity. "Calling the police on Friendship Day? That's very anti-community of you." 20 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. It was Deputy Hernandez, who'd helped me a year ago when I had a trespasser with a drone. Good guy. He stepped out and gave me a once-over, then looked around at the carnival. "Holy hell," he muttered. I filled him in, top to bottom. The unauthorized use, the forged filing, the property damage. Karen sauntered over with her PDF printouts like she was handing over the Magna Carta. "This is a misunderstanding," she said to the deputy. "We're operating under temporary municipal authorization." The land was unposted and marked as community accessible by default zoning. You'll see here. Hernandez held up a hand. "Ma'am, unless you've got a signed easement or lease agreement from the landowner, this looks an awful lot like trespassing." Karen blinked. "But it's a public initiative." He turned to me. "Mr. Maddox, is this your land?" "Every square foot." He nodded. "All right then. Everyone who set up here needs to pack up and clear out. Now." Karen opened her mouth, but the look on Hernandez's face stopped her. She turned sharply and began blowing a whistle. "All right, everyone, emergency schedule adjustment. Let's start packing up." The next hour was chaos. Screaming kids, angry parents, 2 drunk dads yelling at me like I'd kicked their dog. One lady in a sun hat demanded I refund her event fee. I told her she could get it from the dictator in the yoga pants. As the last tent collapsed, I stood in the ruins of my soil beds, heart pounding. This wasn't just some neighborly misunderstanding. This was a full-scale incursion, and Karen hadn't improvised this. No, she had planned it, registered it, filed paperwork. She thought I'd be too old or too quiet or too damn polite to do anything about it. She was dead wrong. The next morning, I woke up angry. Not just regular, muttering under your breath, angry. I'm talking the kind of slow-burn, gut-deep rage that simmers behind your ribs like diesel fumes waiting for a spark. The kind of anger that doesn't go away after coffee, or after chopping firewood, or even after a cold shower. That kind of mad. Because I'd been violated. I walked my land that morning, surveyed the damage. Deep ruts in the soil where truck tires had carved through the west field. A busted compost bin. Empty juice boxes floating in the koi pond like bloated little corpses. One of my goats was limping. I didn't even want to check the garden. By 9, I was in town, sitting across the desk from a real estate attorney named Clara Finch. She looked about 30, wore horn-rimmed glasses and boots better suited for Fashion Week than pasture mud. But she listened. And she didn't talk down to me, which was more than I could say for most people under 40. When I finished explaining, she tapped her pen against a legal pad. Okay, Mr. Maddox, let me get this straight. This HOA filed a public use registration on your property using a municipal green space clause designed for undeveloped or abandoned lots, correct? Correct. And your property is registered, taxed, fenced in several areas, occupied, and used for both agricultural and residential purposes. Correct again. And you never received formal notice, certified mail, or a personal request for consent. I leaned forward. Ma'am, I wouldn't have let those people pitch a tent on my gravel driveway, let alone in my damn tomato patch. She cracked a tight smile. Good. Then we've got them on procedural fraud, trespass, and probable misrepresentation of municipal zoning authority. I like the sound of that. But, she added, raising a finger, they'll argue you didn't post the property properly. I've got survey. Markers every 100 feet. Half the place has barbed wire. Still, she said, you'll want to add signage, big, bold, and notarized if you can. Let's not give them even a sliver to argue assumed public domain. Consider it done. She leaned back, steepling her fingers. Now here's what I propose. We file a cease and desist on HOA activities impacting your land, and concurrently prepare a civil suit for trespassing and property damage. But before we go nuclear, I want to try a precision strike. Go on. We draft a formal notice of property status and boundaries, including a declaration of exclusion from any community programs, and deliver it to the HOA board with a waiver. Contract. What kind of waiver? One that says they acknowledge your land is private, not under their authority, and agree to cease any claims of jurisdiction. And if they don't sign, Clara's eyes twinkled. Then we go public. Local news, Facebook groups, the whole suburban circus. Karen's empire won't survive the PR backlash. Better yet, I said, feeling a rare grin crawl up my face. Let's give her rope. Clara raised an eyebrow. You draft the waiver, I said, but bury a clause in there. Something about further claims resulting in penalty damages. If she's dumb enough to run her mouth after signing, we slam her with it. A legal trap. Exactly. She leaned forward. I like you, Mr. Maddox. That afternoon, I put up a dozen metal signs around the property. Private land. No trespassing. Not HOA jurisdiction. I printed them in neon orange with bold black letters. Even the blind squirrels wouldn't miss them. Then I installed 2 more trail cameras near the back field and one high up in the cedar tree overlooking the path from the subdivision. The next 2 days were quiet. No Karen, no campers, no kids with juice boxes. Then on Friday, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. No stamp, hand-delivered. Inside was a signed waiver from the Sandstone Valley HOA, acknowledging that my property was not under their jurisdiction and agreeing not to refer to it as community space. But I knew Karen. I knew she wouldn't go down that easy. And sure enough, by Saturday, there it was. A new Facebook post in the neighborhood group. We want to thank all our amazing families for coming together to make Friendship Weekend such a success. Though we ran into some logistical hiccups, we remain committed to expanding safe outdoor access for all residents. The push for permanent green space integration continues. It didn't name my land, but it didn't have to. So I took screenshots. I logged timestamps, and I smiled. Because somewhere in that waiver, carefully crafted by Clara and reviewed by a notary, was a little clause in subsection D, paragraph 3. Any future public representations, whether in digital or verbal media, implying authority over or intention to access the private property of John Maddox shall constitute a breach of agreement, resulting in a $100,000 penalty claim and legal action. The fuse had been lit. Now I just had to wait for the boom. I woke up to find myself trending on Facebook. Not the good kind of trending, either. Not the one where people admire your carpentry or compliment your goats. No, I was being called the Angry Hermit of Huntington, complete with blurry surveillance-style photos of me holding a shovel, taken from God knows where. The post was in the Sandstone Valley HOA Facebook group, though someone had taken screenshots and shared them across a few local pages. A neatly typed caption under my photo read, "While we respect all members of our community, even those who choose to live more independently, we feel it is important to raise concerns about aggressive behavior and potential threats to neighborhood safety. Children deserve to feel safe exploring the outdoors." Attached was a thread of comments, dozens of them. "Isn't he the one with the guns?" "I heard he yelled at a 7-year-old. Does anyone know if he's even mentally stable?" I stared at the screen, jaw clenched so tight I could feel my molars grind. This wasn't just HOA gossip anymore. Karen was manufacturing a narrative. I pulled up one of the photos and zoomed in. It was taken from high up. A tree, maybe? I checked the cedar on the north fence line, and sure enough, there was a faint scratch mark on the trunk and a clean break on one of the branches about 12 feet up. Someone had climbed it. That afternoon, I went full paranoia mode. Switched out the SD cards in every trail cam, reinforced the barn locks, double-checked my outdoor motion lights. Then I drove into town and bought 4 new no trespassing private property armed response signs. Not because I wanted to scare people, because I wanted documentation. Later that night, as I was oiling the hinges on the back gate, my phone buzzed. It was Clara. She didn't waste time. "They've filed a complaint against you." "What kind?" HOA petitioned the county inspector to open an environmental concern report. They're claiming agricultural runoff from your property may be affecting groundwater quality. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Runoff? From what? Goat poop and compost tea. They cited unlicensed pesticide use and animal waste mismanagement. My garden is organic and my goats are cleaner than most of those people's kitchens. Still, she said, it opens the door for an inspection. And sure enough, 2 days later, a white Ford Explorer pulled up with a county seal on the door. A man and a woman got out, clipboards in hand, all business. I cooperated. I showed them every inch of the land, the garden, the chicken coop, the water catchment system. They took photos, tested soil, and asked polite but pointed questions. I could see the woman trying not to smile when one of my goats nuzzled her. "I've seen worse," the man muttered on their way out. Way worse. But that wasn't the end of it. That night, I was awoken around 2 in the morning by the sound of my motion sensor alarm. Not the driveway one, the pasture one. I grabbed my flashlight, threw on boots and a hoodie, and headed out. The light near the barn was flickering. My heart pounded. Then I saw it. Red spray paint across the side of the barn. "Keep your guns, goats, to yourself. No more terror." And next to it, a crude drawing of what I can only describe as a goat holding a rifle. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't happening to me. I called the sheriff again. Same deputy, Hernandez, came out, took photos, filed a report, but without a witness or a license plate, he couldn't promise anything. Said it looked like a politically motivated act, maybe from someone excitable in the HOA crowd. After he left, I stood out in the dark for a long time, staring at the barn. My property had been invaded twice now, once physically, once digitally. They were trying to isolate me, smear me, rattle me into backing down. And Karen? She was just getting started. The next week, I got a certified letter in the mail, a code compliance violation from the township. According to the letter, my barn was not up to current aesthetic standards for visible property structures and posed a potential eyesore to the community. It also claimed the fencing around the goat pen was non-uniform in height and lacked approved coloration. It was absurd. It was also total HOA language, parroting their style. I knew where it came from, so I responded the way any rational man would. I climbed a ladder, painted over the red graffiti with matte black barn paint, and wrote in white block letters, "Private land." not subject to your HOA nightmares. Then I installed floodlights aimed right at the fence line. Let them take more pictures, let them talk. I was just getting warmed up. It's a strange thing, realizing your life has become a siege. Not a metaphorical one. I mean a literal siege. The kind where you're surrounded on all sides, not by armies with tanks, but by bureaucracy, gossip, petty regulations, and suburban moms with weaponized smiles. After the barn graffiti incident and the bullshit code violation, I spent 2 nights sleeping with a shotgun propped beside the bed. I didn't expect an attack, I just needed the comfort. Claire and I went full throttle. She filed a cease and desist against the HOA for harassment, named Karen Greenwood directly, and filed a civil suit for trespassing, property damage, and reputational harm. We attached photos of the garden damage, the ruined fencing, and that god-awful spray-painted goat terrorist mural. Karen's response? A press release. I'm not kidding. She actually printed out a goddamn press release on HOA letterhead and dropped it off at the mayor's office and every city council member in town. While we regret Mr. Maddox's hostile reaction to a simple community-building event, we remain committed to inclusion, safety, and unity. We question whether his property, as currently maintained, poses hazards to public well-being, particularly when children and families are involved. They kept painting me like a doomsday hermit with booby traps and PTSD flashbacks. All I wanted was to be left the hell alone. Then came the animal welfare report. I was out back trimming some overgrowth by the goat fence when a white van with animal control printed on the side pulled up my drive like I was running a cockfighting ring. A woman in khakis stepped out, clipboard in hand, serious face. Mr. Maddox. That's me. We received a report of potential animal neglect. May we take a look around? My jaw clenched. Did Karen Greenwood file the complaint? She blinked. I'm not at liberty to disclose the source. That's a yes. I let them in. What else could I do? My goats were fine, a little shaken from all the noise lately, but fed, watered, brushed, and treated. One of them, Daisy, had a healing wound on her leg. She'd gotten snagged on some fencing last week, and I'd been tending to it with antiseptic and vet wrap. They took photos, wrote things down, sniffed my feed bins like I was smuggling heroin in alfalfa pellets. When they left, they said they'd be in touch. 3 days later, I got the letter, temporary removal order for animal welfare review. They were going to take my goats. Clara went ballistic. She filed an emergency motion to halt the order, citing pending litigation and a complete lack of probable cause. In the meantime, I moved the goats into the locked barn and posted the motion on the door with a laminated copy. I was losing my mind, so I went to war. We dug into every damn angle. Clara found out that the community access program used to justify the campsite registration had a sunset clause. It was meant to expire 5 years ago, but had been quietly reactivated by a subcommittee within the HOA without official municipal renewal. We got a hold of HOA internal documents. Don't ask me how, but let's just say someone from the inside didn't like how Karen handled power. The bombshell? A scanned email thread where Karen instructed the board's secretary to backdate a notification about the Friendship Day expansion. She told her to make it look like we sent the mailers. No mailers ever went out. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. This was fraud. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. She started a concerned families group, organized a petition to rezone my land as safety-adjacent open land, claiming it was necessary for the mental health of nearby children. The same children who trampled my spinach patch and left juice boxes in my koi pond. The petition made it all the way to the mayor's office. I knew what I had to do. That weekend, I printed out 20 glossy photos. The trampled garden, the broken fencing, the fake animal abuse order, and the backdated emails. Then I showed up to the next city zoning board meeting, not in boots and denim, but in a suit, with a USB stick in one hand and my Army service folder in the other. I spoke for exactly 6 minutes. I showed photos. I read the clause from the HOA waiver, the one Karen had signed, the one that promised no more claims to my land. I finished with this. I did not fight in a rank, so I could come home and have a suburban paper tyrant camp, her little empire on my private land, and call it community building. Dead silence. Then applause. Actual applause. A guy in the back even stood up. The petition died right there. But I wasn't done, because now, with Clara's help, I filed a motion for injunction against the HOA and Karen Greenwood, locking down any future access to my land until further judicial review. And we filed a separate defamation suit for the Facebook post, for the petition, for the goddamn goat graffiti. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about fire, about pushing back. Karen came after my soil. Now I was going after her foundation. A week of silence passed. No new letters. No late-night motion alarms. No inspectors crawling around my goat pen with their government-issued clipboards. It was unsettling, like waiting for a tornado that you know is coming but hasn't touched down yet. You sit there with your windows boarded, generator fueled, and boots by the door, just watching the sky boil. Clara called it the corporate pause. Said people like Karen didn't just quit, they regrouped. So I stayed ready. I kept logs. Cameras were rolling 24/7. I even got a new one with night vision and cloud storage just in case someone tried to yank an SD card again. Then came the email. A neighbor forwarded it to me. Subject line, Community Town Hall, a safer, greener Sandstone Valley. The invite was for a public event at the Civic Center. Panel speakers included city council members, a zoning consultant, and, naturally, Karen Greenwood. The wording was slick. Join us as we explore opportunities for expanding shared outdoor spaces and building bridges between traditional landowners and modern community needs. It didn't mention me by name, but the implication was clear as glass. I forwarded the email to Clara. Her reply was short. Let her talk. This is what we've been waiting for. So I went. I wore the same boots, same flannel, same trucker hat with the faded "Don't Tread on Me" patch. Let them see me for exactly what I was. No theatrics. Just facts. The Civic Center auditorium was packed, at least 100 people, many from Sandstone Valley, some from nearby areas, free cupcakes and folding chairs, a projector screen up front, local news crew in the back. Karen stood behind the podium like she was giving a TED Talk on suburban utopia. She was polished, voice calm, gestures choreographed, not a hair out of place. We envision a future, she said, where shared land means shared responsibility, where families can gather, where children can play freely without fences, without fear. My fingers twitched. Some people cling to old notions of private isolation, she continued, but the future is collaborative, and we must be brave enough to say, yes, even long-standing parcels can be repurposed for the good of the many. Someone clapped. I did not. That's why, Karen said, holding up a shiny printout, we're submitting a formal request to the city for permanent community easement access to the western acreage of what's commonly known as Maddox Farm. Boom. There it was. The crowd murmured. She had used my name, my land, in public, in writing, on camera. Clara leaned over and whispered, "She's just breached the waiver, and we've got it recorded." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. After the town hall, I walked straight to Clara's car. She had already pulled out the folder from her briefcase. Inside, a certified copy of the waiver Karen had signed weeks ago. Paragraph D, subsection 3, clear as daylight. Any future public representations, whether in digital or verbal media, implying authority over or intention to access the private property of John Maddox shall constitute a breach of agreement, resulting in a $100,000 penalty claim and legal action. We had her. On paper, on video, on record. 3 days later, Clara filed the claim. Breach of contract. Demand for damages. $100,000. The lawsuit hit HOA headquarters like a cruise missile. It spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Within 48 hours, I got anonymous text messages, board members apologizing, HOA families trying to distance themselves, even a guy who offered to testify against Karen if it meant getting his own fees waived. Then came the kicker. A city clerk, bless her, contacted Clara after reviewing the easement request Karen had submitted at the town hall. The clerk noticed something odd. Karen had signed it as President Sandstone Valley HOA, but her name wasn't listed on the current HOA officer registry. The clerk had assumed it was a typo. Clara didn't. She pulled public records. Karen's term had expired over a year ago. There had been no formal election, no board meeting minutes, no ratified extension. Karen had simply kept going, kept signing, kept filing, kept wielding power she no longer had, and nobody had questioned it until now. Clara sent a certified letter to the HOA's legal counsel. Attached, the waiver breach claim, the public meeting footage, and the municipal records showing Karen had no legal standing as president at the time of the event. A week later, the HOA's law firm sent back a short reply. Ms. Greenwood is no longer affiliated with Sandstone Valley HOA in any official capacity. We will not be opposing your motion. Translation: she's done. But I wasn't smiling. Not yet. Because when someone like Karen falls, they never do it quietly. They try to drag others down with them. And I had a feeling she had one last move left in her. There's a silence that follows public disgrace. Not the quiet of peace, but the cold vacuum left when someone detonates their own authority and vanishes. Karen Greenwood disappeared. No HOA emails, no smug Facebook posts, no clipboard sightings near property lines. It was like the earth swallowed her in one loud, expensive gulp. But silence, I've learned, can be dangerous, because silence leaves a void, and someone always tries to fill it. In Karen's absence, the rest of the HOA board scrambled like roaches under a porch light. They issued a vague leadership restructuring notice, offered free trash pickup to restore goodwill, and hosted a community healing brunch, which I'm told featured both quiche and guilt. Too late. The lawsuit stood. The waiver breach was airtight, and Clara had already submitted a formal complaint to the city about Karen's forged presidency, including 3 years' worth of backdated documents and unapproved filings. It was bigger than just my case now. City Hall started sniffing around. The county zoning board launched an inquiry into HOA filings. A quiet word from someone inside said the district attorney's office was reviewing inconsistencies. That's lawyers speak for. Somebody's getting nailed. Meanwhile, I was finally left alone. No more surprise visits. No more passive-aggressive Facebook warfare. My goats grazed in peace. I even let the tomatoes regrow. Clara told me to lay low. Let the fire burn where it's already started, she said. But then the mail came. A thick, padded envelope. No return address. Inside, a USB drive, a handwritten note, and 27 printed screenshots. The note was short, just 2 sentences. Thought you should see this. I couldn't keep covering for her. The screenshots were internal HOA emails, messages between Karen and a few board members, all dated over the last year, meeting minutes forged, votes faked, zoning proposals manipulated. But one thread hit me like a brick to the chest. It was from 6 months ago. Karen had been working on something called the Unity Corridor Project. On paper, it looked like a vague plan to connect neighborhood trails. But in the email, she laid it out clearly. Maddox land is key. With enough community pressure and a public safety angle, we can trigger a forced acquisition or easement. He won't be able to stop us once the language is in. She was trying to take it permanently, legally, slowly, quietly. That's when it hit me. The environmental inspections, the code complaints, the animal welfare reports, all of it, strategic, not just to annoy me, but to build a legal case that my land was a public safety concern. Karen wasn't just power drunk. She was playing chess, and I'd almost missed it. I brought the USB to Clara. She looked like someone handed her the Holy Grail. This isn't just civil, she said. This is fraud, with intent to seize private property through bureaucratic misrepresentation. Can we charge her? I'm not the DA, she said, but I can sure as hell build the package. Within 48 hours, Clara submitted a formal complaint to the district attorney's office, complete with evidence of false use of title, Karen signing as HOA president after expiration, forgery of minutes and board resolutions, attempts to coerce municipal reclassification of land under false pretenses, coordinated misuse of local code enforcement as a tool of pressure. But what really nailed it was the internal phrase, trigger a forced acquisition. It implied intent, malicious, premeditated, targeted intent. The DA opened a preliminary investigation, and the city, desperate to cover their own ass, suspended every HOA-initiated zoning request for the next 90 days. Public pressure exploded. Local news outlets picked up the story, spinning it as a clash between the independent rancher and suburban HOA overreach. I hated the branding, but I understood the power of it. Suddenly, I was being asked for interviews. People sent me thank you letters. Some folks offered money. One guy in Ohio offered to build me a moat. But I wasn't interested in fame. I just wanted the story told right. the truth. So I agreed to one interview with a local reporter named Marcy Lang, known for two things: hating BS and loving lawsuits. We sat on my porch. She asked, "Why do you think Karen came after you?" I answered honestly, "Because I didn't bend. I wasn't one of her people. I wasn't part of the plan, and she couldn't stand that my fence line was where her power ended." The article went viral in the region. One man, one farm, one fight. I laughed at the headline, but it did what it needed to do. The truth was out. Karen hadn't just tried to steal land. She'd tried to rewrite the rules of ownership and got caught. Now the law was coming for her. You'd think when the smoke clears, you'd feel something like relief, but the first thing I felt was exhaustion. Not the kind you fix with a nap, the kind that settles into your bones, makes your teeth feel heavy, turns your shoulders into bricks. A year-long war had ended, and all I wanted to do was sit on the porch and listen to the wind without checking over my shoulder for clipboards or court dates. Then the subpoenas dropped. 3 board members from the HOA, former board members technically, were called to testify in the investigation against Karen Greenwood. The DA's office didn't mince words. They were looking into wire fraud, document forgery, abuse of local authority, and attempted illegal acquisition of private property. I wasn't the only target of her schemes. Turns out she'd been circling another property near the edge of the neighborhood, an older couple who'd refused to sell. Same pattern: code complaints, child safety concerns, whispered rumors about hoarding and unlicensed fencing. Karen was systematic, but her system had rotted from the inside. When she finally appeared in court for her first hearing, she looked like a completely different person. No yoga pants, no designer sunglasses, no clipboard or confident smirk. Just a pale woman in a gray blazer with too much makeup and not enough support from the gallery. I didn't go to the hearing. Clara went. She told me Karen barely spoke, pleaded not guilty, tried to downplay everything, but the judge wasn't having it. The media feasted. HOA abuse stories started trending across the state. One headline read, "From Power to Pariah, the suburban queen who tried to annex a farm." Clara finalized the settlement for the waiver breach suit. Karen's insurance company paid out the full $100,000. I donated a quarter of it to local land rights legal defense groups. The rest went into a new security system, gravel for the West Trail, and finally fixing the old tractor I'd been meaning to repair since the first tent landed on my field. The goats got a new shelter too, with painted walls. No graffiti this time. As for the HOA, they dissolved the entire board. The new one, formed under emergency supervision from the city, sent me a handwritten apology letter. No legalese, no passive voice. Just, "We were wrong. It won't happen again." They even offered to pay for replanting my vegetable beds. I said no. Some things you need to grow back on your own. Funny thing, a few weeks after all the dust settled, one of the neighbors from Sandstone Valley stopped by. Not one of the loud ones, just a dad with a kid who loved animals. He brought a bag of feed and asked if his daughter could pet the goats. Said they'd seen the news and wanted to meet the guy who stood his ground. I said sure. They stayed 30 minutes. No cameras, no selfies. Just quiet appreciation and the sound of a little girl laughing while Daisy nuzzled her arm. After they left, I sat back on the porch, looked over the land, my land, and took a deep breath. This place had bled for me, defended me, refused to be swallowed by concrete and policies and laminated lies. It had held its ground. So had I. Let the HOAs send their newsletters. Let the Karens wave their clipboards. Let the city councils dream up new zoning dreams. There's a fence for a reason. And if they ever forget that again, they'll learn all over.